Welcome to the Jedi Ranger. I'm Jumper555, and I decided I'm going to watch something that is a parody of Star Wars. That's why I finally actually watched Spaceballs. It's a comedy, of course, but the reason why I decided to watch it is one, I want to cover more than just Star Wars and Star Trek on my YouTube channel. I want to talk about some other sci-fi, and what better way to start that than to watch one of the best known parodies of sci-fi as a whole, and specifically of Star Wars and some Star Trek. There's actually some stuff referencing Wizard of Oz, Planet of the Apes, and I think some other stuff too, parodying moments from other properties. But Spaceballs fits that bill. And it also fits the bill because besides Star Wars, I will sometimes talk about classic television on my channel as well. So why not? It fits. It's not television, but it's still considered a classic from about the same time period of a lot of the classic television I do occasionally talk about on my channel as well. But what I have to say is, it is funny, and you can definitely tell which aspects of certain characters they decided to parody a bit more. For example, with the Princess Vespa, basically they more took the what if Princess Leia was in actually a spoiled princess route for her characterization. And then for Lone Star, well, they kind of meshed Han and Luke together. But they also had to an Indiana Jones reference because the first time we see him, he has a fedora on like Indiana Jones. I'm just saying. But actually, the big thing I noticed with him, besides mashing those two characters up, he's at the end, he's revealed that he was actually a prince all along. One that made me think of Flynn Rider, Eugene from Tangled, because in the animated series, Tangled the series / Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure, because they had to rename it, guess what happened? He's revealed to have been a prince all this time. They didn't have to do it, but they did it. But that's not the crazy part. The crazy part, because in Star Wars, Han Solo is secretly from a royal family. Like the Solo family apparently one time ruled all of Corellia. And the thing is, I'm pretty sure this predates those stories being made. The Corellian trilogy, I think, is where it might have been revealed, or was it the New Jedi Order? Wikipedia was not helping me figure this out, and it's going to take me forever to go through all my Star Wars books to figure out which one it's talking about. But I do know the Han Solo trilogy that came out in the late 90s was after this, and those stories that established that part of Han's characterization was also after this. That's all I know for a fact. But the fact that there's a real, like, they predicted something about Han Solo. Actually, it might have been courtship of Princess Leia. I forget what you, but I'm pretty sure that was after this as well. Maybe closer in time. And maybe not. I don't know. The thing is, I looked all this up, and then I couldn't record right afterwards, and I forgot the courtship Princess Leia and the date that it came out. Oh well. I'm talking about a parody. Is it that important? Is it? I don't know. But there's just a lot of fun bits because it is just purely simply a comedy. Though it is interesting that the planet that the good guys are from, as the narrative presents them, are from a monarchy. Meanwhile, the bad guys are from apparently a democracy. Though there's something oddly interesting about what's going on. I wonder what country they were actually trying to criticize with Planet Spaceball. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were trying to criticize the United States of America in some fashion with Planet Spaceball. For one, because when Spaceball 1 transformed into basically a giant space made with a vacuum cleaner, yes, that happened. Remember, this is a comedy after all. It looks like the Statue of Liberty, which is how they get later on the Planet of the Apes reference, parody scene going there. So that has to be somehow there. Or how about this? Going to war against the planet to get fresh air because they ruined all theirs. Some environmentalism commentary. There was a line about how they're just going to, it's not going to last them long enough. I feel like replace air with oil. And yeah, I think we can get some good comparisons there, or at least good jokes at it. But also too, there's a scene actually where President, whatever the leader playing Spaceball, is consuming some canned ale. You know what that made me think of? Illuminations of Lorax. They stole it from Spaceballs. They stole the idea of canned air, fresh air from Spaceballs. Did they intend to? Did they know? No, I don't know. But they did. They stole it. So that's what I'm going to say there. Honestly, though I can talk about more of those comedy moments. Like, for example, the moment where the Spaceballs capture the stunt doubles instead of the actual characters, which I think is just hilarious. Um, and there's so many more small bits. Such example when the main characters crash on the desert planet. Of course, they have to go find some. They eventually found after the collapse of heat exhaustion and dehydration found by the native inhabitants of the planet who, one, are designed to look like Jawas, and two, they just say bink all the time. But when they're walking, they basically sing it to the tune of the Kuna Boogie March, which you might be familiar with if you ever watched the film Bridge on the River Kwai. So if you don't da 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 that tune, I I just did the simple, easier way of doing it, but still, like the fact that they did that is like that is just so crazy. And also, too, speaking of music, besides just using the Kona Boogie March, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But also, too, for the theme that they use when we first see Planet Spaceballs and at least one of the appearance is "Hail to the Chief," which is the official anthem, official march of the United States president. That's another reason why I think they were trying to criticize the United States and so, or make fun of the United States, not necessarily criticize it. It is a comedy after all. Until they dropped their sequel in the film called Spaceballs 2: The Search for More Money, which, by the way, might actually be coming out next year. And this came out in the 80s, I believe, if I remember correctly. But the thing is because I just did research before I made my review after I watched it, and found out that part of the agreement for parodying Star Wars that Mel Brooks made with George Lucas was that Mel Brooks wouldn't try to merchandise Star Wars, or wouldn't try to merchandise Spaceballs, which, given how that Star Wars has made most of its money through merchandising, is quite hilarious. And that was the joke that they threw that into the film as a joke. Bunch of Spaceballs branded stuff appear all throughout the film, and none of it was ever officially released. Or at least nothing in large numbers. Maybe some props were sold, from what I could read. But still, it's like the parodies are spot on, and that's the thing I think we're actually missing a lot in today's society is we don't get enough good comedy parodies. Um, there's some other musical cues I could mention. Another thing too, because the because Princess Vespa, whatever she's actually called, is getting married, and so we get to see where the marriage ceremony is held. It's the first intergalactic church reformed. Oh no, temple, but still reformed. So one, Reformed Judaism is a thing, and they use the term synagogue, but sometimes the term temple might be used. But also too, it makes me think of Reformed, the Reformed tradition of Protestantism. Not all churches say Reform, but some do. It's like the idea is like they're also making fun of all the different complicated names, and the fact that they have to put Reform to let people know it's specifically the Reformed temple, not the non-Reformed temple. And the thing is, that happens in Christianity and probably other religions as well. Well, you see a church, you drive by, see, okay, First Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, First Baptist Church Reformed, First Christian Church, First Lutheran Church, First Methodist Church, Second Methodist Church, Lutheran Church. Actually, Lutheran Church doesn't use the term Reformed too often. But I know I've seen it on Baptist churches before, and I think I've also seen it on Presbyterian churches as well. But the main thing I'm getting at there is that I have in real life I've seen the term Reformed on church signs. Not necessarily in parentheses, but I have seen it. And related to that, I've also seen things like, first, I'm just going to go with, because you see the kind of more weird names, like indicating this kind of stuff more often, I think, with Baptist Church, but like First Baptist Church, First Congregational Baptist Church, First Primitive Baptist Church. And you'll see, like, where they have to specify the exact tradition in the name. It's kind of funny when you think about it. They just, instead of saying, oh, no, First Baptist Church of this city, Second Baptist Church of this city, they have to go specifically throwing in their names. Part of that is because maybe splits in their congregations because of different interpretations and all that. But that scene that made me think of all that and all the different ways different denominations communicate their flavor of Christianity. And though I have a feeling maybe in Spaceballs true, there might be a parody of how so many churches are using just Christian church now instead of more complicated names because they don't want to appeal. They want to try to appeal to everyone, not just people in a specific denomination, even though they actually do typically still follow some kind of tradition. I probably saw way too much about that scene, but like the thing is like clearly for that they took from Christian traditions, but honestly, I've never seen a regular priest or pastor wear something that I would expect for a cardinal or a bishop to be wearing. I'm just saying. But then again, for a royal wedding, yeah, you probably would have at least the bishop doing it. That's probably how it was done in medieval Europe, I would assume. I'm not a medieval scholar, so I don't know quite for sure. But also loved how that character increasingly got more and more frustrated as the wedding kept on getting delayed, to the point where Princess Vesper and Lone Star, when they get married, it's like, okay, do you? Good, you're married. Because he was getting so sick of it kept on getting delayed and he just wants to perform some marriage ceremony before the film ends. And speaking of, well, that's not a case where they make reference breaking the fourth wall, which they do a lot, mind you. I already mentioned where they captured the stunt doubles, and they know it was the stunt doubles once they looked at the faces. But also, too, talking about where they cut out the sequel that is not even out yet, about over 40 years later, I would have to say. Yeah, 87. Yeah, it's literally going to be coming out. Wait, 87? 97? 07? 70? It's going to be coming out 40 years later if it actually comes out. The best thing would be if they filmed it and never released it. That would be the pure. Actually, would be a really good parody by not releasing it of the current state of Hollywood, where there are movies and entertainment where they make something and then not release it for tax-related reasons. But it's just the parody on top of parody, breaking the fourth wall. There was one other fourth wall break that I really wanted to mention. Then I got sidetracked by the year it came out and how it's going to be 4 years when the potential sequel comes out. There was another fourth wall. Oh, I remember now. This scene I've seen pop up on YouTube several times, so you guys, it's probably one of the more familiar scenes. But one, VHSs were the primary form, so who knows if they're going to parody that, but the idea is that the VHS is out before the movie actually is, so they can use the VHS as a tool to figure out where the protagonists are, which I think is just hilarious and very cool for a wall break. Nowadays, I guess they could have one of the protagonists live streaming. It wouldn't be as funny, but they could probably do something with modern technology in some way to do something like that if they really wanted to. But overall, it's just, lots of fun, good gags, and I haven't even mentioned them all. The parody of the forces there, and well, basically, the rings used to control it are not even needed. I just love that the self-destruct button having in just a regular barracks on Spaceball 1, and security was so easy to bypass. And then of course Lord Helmet, parody of Darth Vader, who just has a big helmet. Also love how on the desert planet he's wearing a pit helmet instead of a Vader helmet. I really do love that. I thought that was a very clever gag. But he accidentally sets off the self-destruct when he falls into it. And then we get to watch this crazy, everyone escaping. Obviously, Lone Star, Princess Vespa, and Dot Matrix, which is the C-3PO parody, great name. And then also Boff the Chewbacca parody, who can actually talk and we can understand. They just get away because they did their job. Though Lone Star did all the work. All the other three, they just sat in Eagle 5, Lone Star, and Boff's camper van. Motorhome. Lone Star was the only one who actually went on board the ship and did anything. at least in Star Wars, everyone actually did do something on the Death Star. I'm just saying. Um, but the thing really though is just all the no, everyone's rushing to its escape pod, and the president, Colonel Sanders, spelled with a Z, but obviously named after Colonel Sanders for the chicken, and Darth Helmet are the ones who do not get aboard an escape pod. And Bale, the bearded lady, they all get on an escape pod before those three characters. And they crash land on the planet of the apes in the head of Spaceball 1 turned into a maid. And yeah, it's just a hilarious scene. Though I do think they might have actually used stock footage from Planet of the Apes for that scene. I don't know why. I just think they might have, given the way that the dialogue didn't quite match up. But hey, that's my opinion. You can let me know your thoughts. And there's also too a diner scene which parodies Alien, but the Xenomorph instead just starts a show tune number, and Lone Star and Boff rightfully just leave. Yeah, I probably would too if that happened. But apparently the actor from that film did it and referenced that this is the second time it's happened to him. Yeah, I've never actually watched Alien, so I'm just going off of what I know from pop culture and what I read online. But yeah, so overall, Spaceballs is just a fun, goofy comedy, and that's ultimately what it is. A parody of Star Wars. There's a parody of Star Trek where most of that is just the Vulcan neck pinch, which Lone Star tries to do unsuccessfully, and the character tells him how to do it correctly. The character he was trying, which is hilarious. But there's also a transporter scene where the president is playing Spaceball is nervous about it, so and all that, and he's rightfully so because he ends up with his head on backwards. And then the teleport operator is of course Scottish, parodying Scotty from Star Trek. And then he gets beamed back, and that fixes him. And what does he do? He just walks through the door. Literally, it's just a door from his office to the room he was going to. He didn't need to be transported at all. That is honestly what makes that scene so much funnier, is that he had such an easy way of doing it, but he was talked into doing the sci-fi way, and he didn't like it, and he was right to not like it. There's other things, of course, so many good, funny scenes that I've probably forgotten about. Small moments in the parody of the Luke, I'm your father, where Lord Helmet tells Lone Star, I'm your father's brother's cousin's former roommate. I might have forgotten something. Lone Star, what does that make us? No, Lord Helmet just replies, nothing. Just like you're gonna become, which I think is a hilarious way of parodying it. Because yeah, they could have probably tried to done a more sincere parody, for lack of a better term, but it would have not come off as funny. And that's ultimately why a lot of the stuff works, is because one, they don't take themselves, I think, too seriously in universe, so that helps too. After all, if you are parodying something, you got to have a sense of humor about it. Otherwise, you got to do a proper homage, and that generally requires some more seriousness. You can't be as loosey about it. You can't be as fun with it, because an homage requires a sense of respect. A parody, you can deeply respect something, but you can laugh all you want and make fun of it, because it's a different approach. Basically, I view parody, especially good parody, and especially parody based on something people like, is making like, yep, we know what's ridiculous, and we're gonna make fun of the ridiculous aspects, but we're doing it because we all love it. Meanwhile, an homage is like, this is something people really love, and this is something we gotta hold with the utmost respect, and we gotta treat it seriously. Very different things. Spaceballs is not an homage, it's a parody. It may have some homage elements, and as all parodies will, and some homages will have some parody elements. But this is first and foremost a parody. Like, for example, they have no care whatsoever about real world atmospheric pressure and all that. There's just so many good things that I have forgot. And that's what the comment section is for. Let's continue the discussion about this sci-fi parody, because it's more than just Star Wars, even though that's the one people most associate with. I'm sure if I ever watched Galaxy Quest, most people would talk about it being a parody of Star Trek, but I'm sure you'll see parodies to other elements of sci-fi as well. So, one last thing. Music, actually. I talked a little bit about when they did the Colonel Boogie March and also Hail to the Chief. that's the main use of music. There's a few other musical cues. They definitely did. There's, I think, two scenes where the show tune that the Xenomorph does, of course. But in terms of the main story, you have the music they have over the escape pod sequence, and I think there was one other. But I can only think of basically 5 musical sequences in the entire film, and that includes the background music, because background music does not seem to be as big of a thing in here. Which also I think is very interesting, that that's the one thing they use some music in some important moments. Oh, and also the wedding march too. That makes it 6. Um, but the one thing they really didn't parody to at all, really, for like a better term, is the music. They did not, oh, no homages, no parodies to the music of Star Wars, which is quite interesting. Which indicates they saw that there's a chance that they may have considered doing any kind of musical parody of John Williams's music would have not been appropriate. And I think that's kind of interesting, something that we can take away from it, that they did make fun of a lot of stuff, but there were certain things that they chose not to, something they probably could easily do. Especially because the music in the cantina is called jizz. You think they would have made fun of that somehow, but nope, they didn't. So that's pretty much it, besides the opening sequence, which they did a crawl. And I love there's a scene at the very end. If you're reading this, you don't need glasses. And I'm like, I'm reading it because I have glasses. If I take them off, I couldn't read. Anyhow, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comment section down below. And if you have any good jokes about Spaceballs, Star Wars, Star Trek, sci-fi, whatever, throw them down in the comment section. I would love to hear them. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you always.